Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live stream where we are kicking off the May theme of professional websites. I'm really excited to talk to you all today about turning your website into an opportunity engine. So, whether you are a community member, I'm excited to welcome you and tell you about what we have in store for this month's community theme. If you are new to me or coming to me from social media, then I'm excited to talk to you about how you can make your website into a opportunity engine for yourself that brings you jobs and opportunities. And I am super excited to talk about it. This is one of my very favorite subjects. So why should you listen to me about any of this? Well, I have a long history of using digital marketing techniques to help organizations meet their goals. And I have a long history of helping individuals use digital marketing techniques to meet their goals. And it's a concept that I really care about. It's one that I really enjoy, and it's one that has been extremely useful for me in my career and for all of the folks that I have coached and mentored over the course of my career. And so today we're going to be talking about professional websites and how you can make them into a tool for growth for your career. So for our community members, this is your May kickoff call. We're going to be talking about websites and portfolios all month in the community. If you are not a community member, you can join for free and you'll be able to access this month's course, which is about websites and portfolios for free, as well as our office hours and, of course, feedback from myself. And so you can head over to community.betterwithphoebe.com if you'd like to join. And again, that's free. So let's talk about what we're going to be digging into today in today's kickoff call. So we're going to be talking about setting goals for your website, creating your website plan, choosing your website platform, and then, of course, building it and writing it in a way that actually brings recruiters to your doorstep. That is a really important piece. Obviously, we're not putting a bunch of effort into building a website just to have one. But I want to, before we jump into what to do, I want to take a second to talk about what not to do. So the first big mistake that people make with professional websites is not having one at all. You would be surprised how many working professionals who are out there, wanting to build great careers for themselves have no professional website whatsoever. And so one of the reasons why it's a really great thing to do is to have a professional website is because it really makes you stand out from the crowd, because most people aren't taking their professional brand seriously enough to have a professional website. Now, when I talk to my career coaching clients about professional branding and I talk to them about their websites and they don't have one, usually they come back with one of these three reasons why they don't have one. That, I'm just, a run-of-the-mill, everyday professional. There's not really a reason for me to have a website. I'm not a photographer. I'm not a filmmaker. I don't have my own business. I'm not, bouncing from keynote speech to keynote speech. I'm just, showing up every day and doing my job. I don't understand why I would need a website. That doesn't seem like a good use of my time. But the truth is, people are Googling you. When was the last time that you Googled yourself? Do you know what your Google results look like? If your Google results are, a bunch of random things, some social media, maybe a time that you were mentioned in, a news article, or maybe some of the other professional output that you've put out, that's not necessarily the strongest Google results for you, especially if the thing that you are hoping for is that the people who are searching for you are people who are going to bring you opportunities. Those folks are looking for your website, and so that they can get that view of who you are and what you're trying to do, what you've done in the past, and get to know you as a person and as a professional. Now, a lot of folks will say, well, my LinkedIn does that. It's my online resume. Isn't that what LinkedIn is for? And the truth is, LinkedIn is not as good as a personal website. Of course, you should have a LinkedIn. It is a really, really powerful networking tool, a really powerful way of growing your professional brand and attracting opportunities for you. That's why we spend all of April working on optimizing our LinkedIn profiles. And if you are not a member of the community, head over to the community to get access to the LinkedIn course and all of the live streams that we did around LinkedIn last month. But having a really strong LinkedIn is not the same as having a really strong website. LinkedIn is a social network and it has lots of noise. And so when somebody comes to your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn recommends other professionals for them to check out. Those people are technically your competition for a position. There's ads everywhere. There's all sorts of other content. There's notifications. There's all sorts of stuff on that website that can take that person's attention away from you. Even if they came to LinkedIn specifically to look at your profile and get to know you as a professional, there's so much going on that it is actually quite likely that they could get distracted and maybe not reach out to you when they initially meant to. On the other hand, if they Google you and they go to your website, that is a distraction-free environment that you control that says exactly what you want to say and presents you in exactly the light that you want to present yourself. So then the last question is, the last objection that I get from folks who don't have professional websites are, well, it sounds really complicated. It sounds really like it's going to take a lot of time, that it'll be really expensive. I don't have the time and money to create, this super gorgeous, slick, elaborate website. But the truth is, depending on what your goals are for your site, it doesn't need to be elaborate or fancy or slick or shiny and sparkly. It can be very straightforward and simple and still accomplish the goals that you have for yourself in your career. Another mistake that a lot of folks make with their professional website is building the website without a plan. So they just go in and sign up for something and start building. And a lot of times what ends up happening is they either are overwhelmed by the prospect of building the website in the first place and they don't start, or maybe they don't finish, or they bite off more than they can chew and start to build this very elaborate website and realize that they don't actually have the time, expertise, or assets to build out and fill out a really fancy, elaborate website. Or they build a site and they finish it, but they don't really find that anyone's coming to it, that nobody's, clicking through to the things that they expected. It's just not working the way that they expected it to. It's not doing what they want that website to do for them. And the reason why that happens is because if you start your website with your goals in mind, all of the decisions that you make around your website are tied to those goals and reinforce your ability to make those goals into reality. But if you just get started and wing it, then there's a much higher likelihood that some of the decisions that you make around your website are not going to help reinforce your ability to make your goals into a reality. Your website goals should be where you start, and those website goals will help you decide which platform is the right one for you, how your website should be structured and laid out, what visuals you need and what you should write on it, and what those visuals should do for you and what those visuals should do for a viewer who's coming to your site for the first time, and what that copy, what the words on your site should do, and how they should direct people, and what kinds of actions it's going to direct people toward, and how it's going to portray you as a professional and as a person. If all of that is tied to and informed by your goals, then it's going to help support them so that they are more likely to become a reality. A third mistake that folks make with their professional websites is letting Google choose the platform. So this is a very common thing. Someone will say like, oh, I think I need a website. They go on Google and search website platform or website hosting or website builder. And then they just sort of pick the one that's sort of in the top three. Maybe they'll go to a website and that's sort of ranking them and pick one of those. But that's not a very good way to choose a platform. Again, we want to make sure our website goals are informing the platform, not that whoever has the best SEO or is paying for the most ads are the ones that are choosing, that's how we're choosing our web platform. There are hundreds of options. And so when you come at it with a very specific point of view, with a plan, with goals in mind, then you don't get overwhelmed by how many options you have, because it's really easy to decide this one's not worth it for me. This one doesn't have the features I need. This is more complex than I need it to be. And you can easily zero in on your best option. Another big mistake that folks make with their professional websites is letting the platform dictate the site structure. So, for most platforms will provide you with a series of templates and a menu of templates to choose from. These are all WordPress templates that I'm showing you here. And a lot of folks will get to this point and just scroll until they find one that they think they like. And then they'll choose that one based on liking the way that it looks. But again, our goals should be the thing that is informing the structure of the site. And so it shouldn't be based on what aesthetic you are more drawn to. It should be which one of these templates is most likely to give me the structure that will drive toward the goals that I've set for my site. And then the last mistake that folks make when they are creating their professional website is starting from scratch, completely reinventing the copy wheel. By far, the most difficult and most complicated and worst part of building a website is actually writing all of the words that go on it. And when you're looking at that blank page, trying to figure out what to write, trying to figure out what to say, especially when you're writing about yourself, that can be really stressful, really anxiety inducing. And it's one of those things that can be so distasteful that you end up procrastinating on it. And this is the place where a lot of people sort of fall off or take shortcuts just to get done with the project so they don't have to spend all of this effort trying to figure out how to talk about themselves. But when you start with goals, it makes it a lot easier to decide what you should actually be writing about and what you should say and what kind of language you should be using to give the impression that you want to give to the people who are coming to your website. So at the end of the day, it's really important for you to have a professional website. And if you are sitting here on this live stream, I'm assuming that you already believe that a professional website is something that you should have. Or if you already have one, you are excited about finding a way to make it even better and to turn it into something that brings you opportunities. So let's talk about how you do that without, busting your budget or driving yourself crazy. And this is what we're going to be going through over the course of the entire month in the community. So the underlying principle behind all of this is measure twice, cut once. We want to do all of that planning. We want to do the research. We want to make sure that we have all of our pieces together so that we're ready to put them together into a picture that really is exciting for the folks who are coming to our website with opportunities. And basically, it comes right down this list as I came over that I went over at the beginning of the presentation. First, you want to set your goals. Then you want to create your website plan. Then you want to choose your platform, and then you want to start building and writing. But of course, we want to make sure that we're doing all of that in the most efficient way possible. So let's jump into setting goals. So there are lots of goals that you can have for your professional website. I have a few that I've listed here. The most important one that you should start with is controlling your search results. So it should be really important to you to make sure that when you set up your website, it's set up in a way that if somebody searches your name, they are going to find this website. So the number one thing that you need to be thinking about when controlling your search results is a goal for you is the domain name itself. You don't want to be too clever with your domain name unless you already have a very established audience and a very established position in your field or in your industry where you can bring some flavor to it without being confusing. If that's not the case for you, you really should try to stick with some version of first name, last name. You could also bring in your function. So it could be something like, AndreaWrites.com. Or if your name is particularly common, like if your name was Andrea Jones, then there might be lots and lots of those who, and if somebody searches for that, it might be challenging for you to, if you go to buy that domain, it might be challenging for you to actually get it. Somebody might have already bought it, and it could be extremely expensive to try to get a domain from someone that already owns it. But on the other hand, if you bring in another piece of that, like Andrea Jones Writes, that can be a much easier domain for you to get. And then because that domain has your name in it right there, when someone searches your name on Google, they are far more likely to find your website and have that be the number one or number two result, which is exactly what you want. You want the number one most important goal for a website so that if a recruiter or a journalist whoever recruiters with a job or a journalist who's looking for sources or an event planner who's looking for speakers or any other person who is looking to learn more about you to provide you with an opportunity, when they Google you, you want the thing that comes up at the top of the search results to be your website. Another thing that's going to be important for most of you is highlighting your skills and achievements. And so that might be, making sure that your resume or your job history is easily accessible on that site. And so you're going to want to make sure to, if that is something that's important to you, that's going to be something that you keep in mind when you're making those further decisions about what kind of website you should have, what platform you should be on, what kind of structure it should have, and what kind of visual and text elements should be on it. So let's take two examples of primary goals and see how that might impact the way that you approach developing your website. So if the only thing that you want to do is just control your search results, is have a place for searchers to land and see that you're taking your career seriously, that you stand out from the pack, and that you have, a certain set of skills and experience, maybe their ability to contact you if they want to offer you an opportunity. Then you're going to go for a much simpler site platform. You're not going to need to go into like the most expensive, most flashy, most customizable, most flexible, most technically complicated website platforms. You don't need all of that. You just need something simple. On the other hand, if you are looking to demonstrate your knowledge, there's a bigger range in terms of ways that you can do that. And so more platforms might be applicable for you. If you just want to demonstrate your knowledge by maybe having a blog with some articles about your approach to work, or your approach to your function, or giving the sort of the behind the scenes for some of the big projects that you've done, then that might be one kind of platform. On the other hand, if you are going to show your entire portfolio and it's a visually heavy portfolio, maybe you are working in a video or image or a visual medium, then that you're going to need a platform that's a bit more complicated. And I have some specific options that are my favorites that I'll mention in a little bit. So once you know what your goal is, you can start thinking about your site structure. And so again, using these two examples, if the only thing that you want to do is control your search results, have a place for recruiters to land that says, I'm a professional that takes my career seriously, this is who I am and my approach to work, then you can stick with a simple one-page website that has limited images, limited text, and as long as it has some way for people to contact you, possibly a way for them to download your resume, and links to any relevant social media platforms, then you're pretty much done. And that's all you need in terms of structure. That's all you need in terms of visuals and copy. And you have a pretty clear idea of what you need to get out of your platform, and you probably don't need to pay a lot for one. On the other hand, if you want to demonstrate your knowledge in some way, then you're probably going to need, multiple pages for your website. That's going to, cut out a few platforms, and that's going to make other platforms a bit more attractive. You're probably going to be paying a little bit more, but not a ton. And then you're going to want to make sure that you have some additional images, some images of yourself, some images of the work that you do, the environments that you do it in, or maybe even some conceptual stuff about that is a bit more conceptual about how the kind of work that you do. One thing that I highly recommend against, however, is really basic stock photos. There are some fantastic stock photo websites out there that have much more dynamic, much more visually strong, much more stylistic, stylized photos that you can still access for free or for low cost. My favorite, if you really just need like one or two pieces, I really love going to Unsplash for that. But if you need something that's a higher quality, then you can go to Getty or to iStock Photo and buy a one-time royalty, one-time license to use a super high quality photo on your website. And then, of course, if you or if you are yourself a photographer, you can just put your work on that website. So there's going to be one page there, obviously, that's just about you as a professional. But you're also going to need another page that has that knowledge on it that you are trying to demonstrate. And so that could be your real selection of clips. If you're a journalist, I know we have a lot of journalists on the call today. If a portfolio, it could be a list of companies that you've worked with if you are project-based, or you could have a page that's specifically a blog. I love the idea of having blogs on professional websites. A lot of people get intimidated by them, but I think it's one of the strongest ways that you can say that you take your career seriously, and it can really create a sort of a rabbit hole experience for people who are coming to your website for the first time. And so one of the things that I recommend for a blog on a professional website is to answers to think about the questions that you normally get in an interview, and then answer those questions in blog format. So if there's one of the questions that people always get is, tell me about yourself, and the way that I recommend answering a question like that is illustrating the through line for your career, the theme that really unites all of your positions together. And that can be a really great blog post to sit on your website, so that if somebody is curious about you but they haven't exactly reached out yet, that's a really great way for them to learn about you. And then, there are lots of other interview questions that can turn into really great blog posts as well. If you are in a particular field that requires a certain skill set, the way that you approach building that skill set, or some of the mistakes that you have learned from, or the things that you would go back and tell your earlier self about that particular skill. If there are particular tools that you really like or dislike, having a blog post about your top 3 or top 5 favorite tools for the kind of work that you do. Those are really great pieces of content that demonstrate that you take your job really seriously. And who knows, maybe someone Googling that kind of information will find your blog on its own. But really, the key audience for a blog on your professional site that's really meant to attract job opportunities are recruiters, journalists, and event planners. Because when they see that the way that you approach your work and the way that you portray yourself as a professional, when they see that through those blog posts, it gives them a much bigger picture, a much clearer, much more full picture of who you are as a professional, and they're more likely to reach out to you with whatever opportunities they're thinking about. And then, of course, you're still going to want to have a contact option. You're probably going to want to have some sort of PDF resume download option, and then some sort of social media links. And again, this structure comes from the goal. We know that these are the things that we want to have on the website because we are starting with the goal. And so knowing that we want these pieces, what kind of structure do we want to have the site have? And so here are some examples. So the next thing that you want to do is map the actual site. Now, I recommend doing this like on a piece of paper, and actually not doing it like on a document or trying to look at it on different platforms, because you don't want those platforms to influence your site structure. You want your site structure to be influenced and completely driven by your goals. And so here I have a few examples of how your goals can help you identify what kind of features you need your platforms to have, and what kind of content is going to need to be on your website. And so the simplest one is this one at the top. If the thing that you want is your site to help you do is get jobs, then you're going to want to make sure that a resume is available on your site. Not just one that is sort of, not just a page that has your job history on it, but a PDF that a recruiter can download and give to a hiring manager. And so you're going to want to have some sort of download feature where there's a button or something so that someone can download that PDF. And then, of course, you're going to need a PDF version of your resume. And so for each of the examples I have here, you can see how starting with a goal, and then thinking about, what do I want the person to do? The person who's going to help me achieve this goal, who are they, and what action do I want them to take when they're on the site? And then what feature on my website would help them take that action so that they can do the thing I want them to do? And then what do I need to provide so that there's something, so that that feature is pointed towards something, so that person has something to act upon, so that they can help me with the goal that I'm trying to achieve. So, and then for each goal that you have for your site, you want to make sure that you go through this process of, this is the goal, this is the action I want the user to take, this is the feature that I think I will need in order for that user to take that action, and this is the kind of content that I'm going to have to provide in order for all of that to work. Now, we're not making the content at this point. Some of it you'll already have. So for that top example of a resume, you're already going to have a resume. You're already going to have a PDF of that. But some of these other things, like that I have listed down here, like photos or links or articles or a reel or something like that that you might want to put on your website. That might be something that you need to put together later. And we'll talk, or you might need to optimize it further. And we'll talk about how to do that in a little bit. So let's talk about the platform that you're going to want to choose. These three are my favorites. I have used all three of them. Again, there are hundreds of platforms out there, and depending on your goals and the structure and the features that you want for your site, these may or may not be appropriate. But there are three that I have personally used at different points in my career and have found them to be really great. The first one is About Me. About Me is a really simple website that allows you to create just like a very simple one-page website where it's just an image, a little, a paragraph or two of text, a button where somebody can contact you, or you can have that button be a download, like download a PDF, and then it has some additional links that you can use to, other social media platforms, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, whatever. And it is about $90 a year for a paid account, which allows you to use your own domain. So you can do AndreaJonesWrites.com. And you can set up an About Me from scratch in less than an hour. And that will be exactly what you need if your only goal is to show, I take my career seriously, I take my personal and professional brand seriously, and I want to take control of my Google results. One Pager is another platform that I really like. When I moved from About Me, I moved to One Pager because I wanted to start highlighting a bit more of the brands that I had worked with and some of the speaking engagements that I had used. And so One Pager allowed me to take that sort of very simple website where it was just one image of myself and then, a couple of buttons, but I was also able to add a few sections where I was able to say a little bit more about myself. I was able to bring in some additional images like logos of different companies that I've worked with and worked for, and then to bring in some additional links. But it was all still one page website. The whole thing took me maybe 2 or 3 hours to put together. And it's not because I'm particularly tech savvy. It's because About Me and One Pager are explicitly built to be very simple, very straightforward to put together so that it is really easy for you to get them stood up. But both of these are pretty simple websites. They're really meant for more text or image-based work. They're not going to be great for somebody who is trying to put out a lot of content on a blog. Neither of these have blog functions. They're not going to be great for someone who has a visual job where you're going to need to show, or a musical audio job. So if you're a podcaster or a musician, these are not going to be good options for you. But if you're just a working professional, these are both going to be really great options for you. Squarespace, on the other hand, I have also used, and I found that their blog feature to be really, really useful and easy to use. And I found their templates to be really beautiful and flexible and easy to use. But the site is a bit more complicated. There is a bit more of a learning curve. But if you want a really slick, flexible site with lots and lots and lots of really robust features that can grow with you as your career grows and changes and becomes more dynamic, Squarespace is a really great place to go. And as you can see, there are no links here anywhere. I don't have any affiliation with any of these companies. I just personally use them and found them to be very helpful at different points in the growth of my professional brand. I'm currently on a completely different website because I also need, something that allows me to have a community and allows me to have a newsletter and all of these other things. But I'm really glad that I went from this extremely simple site About Me and then grew my site over time as it needed to be more complicated, because there was never a point where I was so overwhelmed or spending so much money that my website felt unsustainable. Because once you get to that point where it doesn't feel like you can sustain the website because it is too much work to stand up, too much work to maintain, then you're going to end up where you give up on it and it looks incomplete and it's out of date. And then it does the opposite for you, where someone Googles you and they find this like half-built, out-of-date website that makes you look like you don't take your career seriously, and that you're not particularly dependable as a professional. So we don't want that to happen. So make sure that you choose your platform wisely, based both on your resources and the goals that you have for yourself. So let's talk about building and writing for your site. So now we've done all of this planning, we've been doing all of this measuring twice, and now it is time to finally cut. So we have pulled the trigger on a platform, and now we want to make sure that the way that the website is built and what we put on it in terms of visuals and what we put on it in terms of copy actually does what we want it to do. That we want it to bring job opportunities, speaking opportunities, other opportunities to be featured in media, the kinds of things that help us grow in our stature and grow in our skills in our career. So the first thing that I recommend that you do is do some research on who your sort of competitors are. Find other professionals in your field who have professional websites, and try to look at what those websites are doing for those professionals and whether those websites are effective or ineffective at those goals. It can be really useful to see some examples that are out there in the world and help you understand what's possible, what works, and what doesn't work. Another thing to pay attention to when you're looking at these competitor sites are specifically the words they use. Now, remember earlier in the presentation, we talked about a big mistake that people make is reinventing the copy wheel. That is a big reason why I am a huge advocate of copy mining, which is a specific marketing technique where you go out and look at all your competitors and you look at the way that they describe yourself and you collect all of that into a big document so that you can understand all of the options that you have in terms of how to describe yourself. And then you can pull out the things that are relevant for you. You can adapt and remix and craft a that works. And because you're working really hard to write it all from scratch and you have no idea if any of it works. On the other hand, if you start from a copy bank where you've copy mined from all of your competitors, you know you're starting from a good place. You can look at the way that these competitors describe themselves, how they describe their work, and you can use that and adapt it to the way that you want to describe yourself and align that with your goal. Something that's really important to say when you're talking about copy mining is that you want to make sure that you are adapting and remixing and paraphrasing and changing, using those as elements that you can mix together to describe yourself in a new and original way that is still effective. You don't want to just copy and paste from folks. That's plagiarism. It sucks for everyone. It's really frustrating. And nobody wants to be on the other end of it. And it's also not a good representation of you if you are just copying someone else's descriptions of themselves and descriptions of their work and using it for yours. It's actually not a good description of you or your work. So definitely don't plagiarize. So once you have your big copy bank, you're ready to start writing. The next thing that you want to do is prioritize your build. So there are going to be different moving pieces. This is a bit of a project. It's not a big project, but it is a bit of a project. And so you want to make sure that you are building in a way that is sustainable. So start with the essential elements. If you're just doing a one-page site, then that's just going to be getting that image of yourself up, getting those couple of sentences about who you are up, getting that contact button working, getting that download PDF button working, and then you're pretty much ready to move on to your next stage. But if you have a more complex website, it's really important for you to choose what is that one page that really needs to be ready for this site to go live, and then just focus on that page until it is completely finished, and then move on to another one. I've had a lot of career coaching clients who have come to me for some professional branding support, have sort of half-built websites where they have a bunch of different pages and none of them are particularly complete. And that, again, looks pretty unprofessional. The best thing for you to do is to build one page all the way until it's done. And then once that most essential, most important page is done, push the site live so that you can start attracting traffic from these recruiters and journalists and event planners that you want to receive opportunities from. And then you can build those other pieces of your site over time when it's more convenient for you. So for our example, for a more complex website where it's really about not just about securing the search results, but also about displaying knowledge or displaying a portfolio, you are probably just going to get your sort of about me page done first. get that up and done out of the door. And then you might want to do your portfolio page, get that done and out the door. And then you might want to work on your blog and get a few entries in and then get that up and out of the door. That way, you always have a really great representation of yourself out there on the internet. And the thing that is unfinished is unpublished. Another thing that's really important, and I cannot stress how important this is that you need to get feedback on your website. If you're just like in it on your own by yourself, building your website, toiling away, you have no idea if you can get too close to the project and you have no idea what the experience is like for somebody who's coming in fresh. So certainly ask friends and family for support, but try to go beyond that. See if you can ask other professional colleagues other people in your professional network for feedback on your website, and tell them what your goal is. Make sure that they know, that you want them to be honest with you, and tell them what your goal is, and ask them, do you feel like this website achieves this goal? If you were coming to this website and you wanted to contact me, how would you do that? If you go to this website and you look at my portfolio, do these individual projects tell you enough about who I am as a professional? Are you clear enough about what these mean for what I'm able to do as a professional? So that's prompting your testers without priming them. You don't want to say, do you think this website is good? Because that is a very subjective question, and they're probably going to say something that they feel like might not hurt your feelings. It's much more effective to give them a very specific prompt. Like, if you were going to if you came to this website and you wanted to contact me, how would you do that? And watch them as they're on your website. If you're doing it over Zoom or something like that, have them screen share with you. If you're in the same room, just watch over their shoulder and see how they interact with your site. This is how major brands make sure that their sites work well. And when you run across a site from a major brand that doesn't work well, it's because they haven't done this. And you don't want a recruiter to come to your site and not be able to figure out how to contact you. You don't want them to go visit your portfolio and not really understand how those pieces fit into the overall context of your work product. You want to make sure that all of those things come out perfectly clear and perfectly organized for the people who are coming to your website. And the easiest way for you to figure that out is to get feedback from someone else. Now, once your website is built, you want to make sure that you are putting it everywhere. It should be on your resume, it should be on your LinkedIn, it should be in all your social media bios, and it should be in your email signature, because you want people to go to that website and get an understanding of who you are. Also, when you have that website linked in other places, that helps Google understand that the website is a legitimate extension of you, and then it is more likely to show up at the top of the results. And then the last thing you want to do is to create an upkeep and growth plan. So once you create that website and you stand it up and it looks great and you're really happy with it, that's probably not the last time you should touch it. You probably should still come back to it every once in a while and make a decision about how you want to update it. Do you want to add new photos that give it some color and freshness? Do you want to add some additional things to your blog? Or are some of the articles that you wrote in the past no longer relevant and need to be updated? Have you done some big new projects that you want to make sure to add to your portfolio so that it's an accurate representation of your work product? Make sure that you put on your calendar to take a look at your website on a regular basis. How often that is really depends on the complexity of your website. If your website is on the more simpler side, maybe you only need to do it once a year. If your website is a bit more complex, you might need to do that twice a year or quarterly, but make sure that you put it on your calendar so that it doesn't just fall off of your list. And so I hope that you learned a lot about how to build a website that is high ROI, so high return on investment. I would love to have you come over to the community. If you're not already a community member, we are going to be doing websites and portfolios all month this month. So you're going to have, if you're in the community, you're going to get free access to my Magnetic Professional Websites course. And that goes even more in depth into each one of these steps with lots of tutorials and templates and examples. Also going to be doing weekly Q&A and site audits. And so if you already have a site or if you're working on your site and you want some live feedback from me, head over to the community. I'm happy to do that for free during office hours. And then of course, anyone who's posting their homework and their updates and their websites to the community will be getting direct feedback, not just from me, but also from the community members. And so with that, I invite you to come to community.betterwithphoebe.com and join us as we go through the Magnetic Professional Websites Challenge over the course of this month. Now I'm going to pop over and see if we have some questions. So we do have one question about choosing a domain. So if you already have a domain and you feel like it's not the right one for you, you absolutely can buy another domain. And you're just going to have to go into your website settings to see to figure out how to change the platform so that it is pointing to the right place. That other domain, as long as you own it, you don't need to worry about somebody taking it or it being used for something else. Domains are not particularly expensive, and so if you want to hold on to it just in case, whether just in case is to make sure nobody else gets it or because you might use it for something else in the future, that's totally fine. You're just going to want to go into your platform settings and make sure that the website is being pointed to the right place. Now, if you haven't built anything on that domain, then there's really nothing extra that you have to do. Buy that new domain, start setting up your goals, figuring out what you want your website structure to do. And then once you have all of those sort of measure twice pieces put together, you can choose your platform and then point that platform to the domain that you've chosen for yourself. So we have another question about posting to a professional blog. Since the professional blog is not meant to, so there's two ways to answer this question. One is, do you want the professional blog itself to be something that people find, and then that's how they find you, that they find you through the blog? That's going to be a blog that you need to update relatively frequently. So at least monthly, more preferably weekly or more than weekly. Like then you want to be thinking more like almost like a publication, like a blog. But if the purpose of those blog posts are really more to show who you are as a professional and to give color to who you are, then you really only need to post something quarterly or at least quarterly. And again, leaning on in terms of subject, think about the questions that you get asked in interviews and answer those. If someone was going to ask you, tell me about a time when you had a difficult conflict at work, then that's a really great topic for a article on your professional website's blog where you could talk about how you deal with conflict in the workplace. And again, the audience for that is a recruiter or a customer or a reporter or an event planner who is coming to your website with an opportunity, who is looking to learn more about you. It's not about getting as many clicks as possible in that situation. And so you don't need to update that super often because what you put on it is unlikely to go out of date super quickly. So Luis asks about approaching goal setting. I recommend, if you have no idea what your goals should be, then I recommend starting really small and just start with securing the search page. And so get just a really simple one-page website that where like you're just on there and you're 1 or 2 when someone searches your name. That is a really, really great place to start. In terms of overall goal setting for your website, that really needs to track with the goals that you have for your career. So if you're just at a point where you're open for opportunities and you want to make sure that if a recruiter finds you, that they say like, yeah, that's an interesting person, we want to make sure that we want to reach out to them, then your goals are going to be more around that. So that's going to be about demonstrating your expertise and your experience, showing a bit more of your professional approach and the skills that you have. If you have any sort of deliverables that you can post to your website, those are the kinds of goals that you're going to have around that. If you are looking to increase your stature in your industry, that's a different set of goals. So that might be where you are trying to demonstrate that you're really good at speaking. And so you might want to link to any opportunities where you have been on video or been on a podcast or been interviewed. And so then that goal is going to be around showing a particular a skill set that makes event planners who are looking for keynote speakers or podcast hosts who are looking for interview guests, having those folks reach out to you and see you as a really great solution to the problem that they're trying to solve, which is who's going to speak at my event, who am I going to have on my podcast next. So we'll stick around for a little bit longer to see if we have any other questions. In the meantime, I would love to invite you again over to the community. So the community is completely free, and you can join absolutely for free. And this month we are going through the Magnetic Professional Websites course. The course is also free, and so you can join the community. You'll have free access to the course, lifetime access to the course, and also you'll be able to tune into the weekly office hours. And so if you wanted to talk to, so if Luis, if you wanted to talk through this question of like, where am I, this is where I am in my career, and this is what I'm not really sure what my website goals could be. What office hours would be a great place for us to sort of come together and have that conversation, and you walk away with some actionable items in terms of how you could structure your website goals and then move down the process that we've discussed. So it looks like we don't have any more questions. Of course, if you would like to reach out to me, you can head over to betterwithphoebe.com, my main website, where you can see all of my information, including my coaching services. And I hope to see you at the community at community.betterwithphoebe.com so that we can go through the Magnetic Professional Websites Challenge together. Thanks, everyone.